Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. We have amazing experts coming in on this show from all over the world with all sorts of backgrounds. Today, no exception, Jennifer Smith. She lived in Australia, New York, Nashville. She's literary, and if I didn't say it, literary all the way. She's the author of Spin Literary. She's touched 100 plus New York Times bestsellers, reaching over 100 million people. Big names like Rhonda Byrne, The Secret, Dr. Oz, many others as well. Valeria Burton, Susie Welch, if you remember the GE former chairman. And she does more than just literary agency stuff. She's a ghostwriter, she's a writer, media strategist, publishing consultant. She helps with your foreign TV rights and all the rest. She's got her finger on the pulse of books and much more than that. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again. It's probably been almost a decade. I'm super excited to have you on the show. Can you share with us a time in your life, a moment of serendipity, synchronicity that either launched you onto this career path or you had something you couldn't explain, but in the end, when you look back, it all makes sense now?
Yeah, I think it was the minute that I decided to go to Australia. That was one of those decisions for several decades of my career. I'd spent climbing the corporate ladder, right? And there are some people that's the right path for them, and that environment is where they thrive. But for me, there was always just this tug, this nudge sort of in the back of my head saying there's got to be more. And it was interesting because I thought that more was climbing the ladder and just getting higher and higher and higher. And really, it was interesting the way just the twists and turns that life took. We took a leap of faith, went to Australia. And once I was there, it was that moment of going, oh my goodness, now what am I supposed to do? And it's really where, in a moment of silence, staring out, watching kangaroo on a golf course, where it came to me like freedom over fear. And there was so much fear in letting go of who I thought I was supposed to be professionally, and all of those things that had made up what I thought was important in my life up until that point. And once I finally lived by that whole mantra of freedom over fear, I started making business decisions from that place. I sort of threw my hands up in the air and just said, okay, what is meant to be will be. And work started organically coming in. And I'm, 7 years later, and I will tell this to everybody, I've never advertised my business. Everything that's happened in terms of my business, we pray over it. We think about it. We're really intentional, and the work comes. And I'm not saying that that's not, that has nothing to do with the 20 years that I put in before that moment when I stepped out, but it's really now walking in that freedom and allowing what's meant to be to come to us, as opposed to chasing all the things that maybe you think you want, but will leave you on a path of not being fulfilled.
I love it. And I'm going to just mention for folks, you spent 10 years at Simon Schuster in both New York and Nashville, and then went on to HarperCollins, I believe Nelson Books. There you were, was it like deputy marketing head, something like that?
I was the VP of marketing. Yep.
Yeah, VP of marketing. Okay. Can you tell us about that time climbing the corporate ladder? What were some of the most fun moments? You've touched a lot of well-known authors. You got a lot of experience. People turn to you for help for book launches and much more than that strategy. Can you describe kind of the flows there?
In terms of how we work with people, or just how I got into the business?
How you got into the business and what you found your special touch was, your abilities.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was, even from the time I was a little girl, I was drawn to stories. And when I first got into the industry, I was in journalism. And so I was captivated by stories, but telling the news, it was not, there was just a bit of a disconnect. Especially now I look back on it, I'm like, oh, thank goodness I didn't go that route. But from the minute I ended up at Simon & Schuster, and like you mentioned, it was a long career that I was there. And it was just that opportunity I had every single day to be immersed in other people's stories. Like, that was the thing for me that fed my soul. It's my passion. It's what I love to do. And so being able to do it on the corporate level and really cut my teeth in a way where I was with the best of the best. And you learn so much by being in that system and by being surrounded by these brilliant and amazing people. And so being able to do the work at that level, all of that helped once I did step out on my own to know that I A, knew what I was doing, and B, had the capacity to sort of create and cultivate that life that I wanted once outside of the corporate world.
And for folks at home, I mean, you were literally at the Kansas City Chiefs, so to speak, during their Super Bowl reign. You had Paul Young, the Shaq. You've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of different folks. Can you give us a sample of that interaction and how you were able to turn around and make something happen as a result? So, where your touch was special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing of it is that every project I've been able to work on, like nothing is the same. Like, and that is what anybody who works with me, they will say the same thing, where you're not just a conveyor belt. Where for anybody who's touched the publishing industry, a lot of times it can feel like that because most publishers have this large menu of people coming in and tons of titles being published all at the same time. And sometimes it is a cut, copy, and paste. And that was just never something that worked for me. I always say, I don't do throw it at the wall and see what sticks. I don't do cut, copy, and paste. Like, I want to know authentically where someone is. So every time when I start working with somebody, even when I was back at Simon and Schuster, I would sit down with them our first meeting and I would say, look, what is it that you want? Like, what is it that makes your heart happy? What is it that gives you that fire in your belly? And then we would reverse engineer sort of our plan based on those things. And it worked because you're no longer just looking at a book as a product. You're actually looking at a human being who has a story, and how is that story going to impact the lives of every single reader? And that was the biggest thing too, is looking at a book and saying, how does this book here have the capability to impact a reader's life? And so for me, it was always important to make sure that we were pulling those positive nuggets out of every single project and making sure that we were really identifying those felt needs, right? I mean, yes, a fiction book can be meant to be an escape. It can put somebody in sort of this alternate world where it's like watching a great movie. Where if you're talking about a self-help book or you're talking about a memoir or a nonfiction, those have the ability to impact people's lives in a really positive way. And so that was that driving force for me.
Okay, so you guys have a footprint now, spinliterary.com, in New York, LA, Nashville, Minneapolis, Sydney. Can you talk to us about, again, one of those moments where you just were really inspired? It could have been about the logo, it could have been about this, could have been about that, but where did, again, synchronicity kick in, starting this whole new chapter of your life?
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness. There were several moments. I mean, I wish that I could, like on a timeline, I could go, there's one, there's one, there's one. I think the most profound one was probably when we got back from Australia. And so coming back from Australia, that was a really difficult time personally. My husband was struggling through some health issues. And when we left, when we originally went to Australia, we thought that we were going to be there for a substantial amount of time. And so even though it was a leap of faith, it was that moment where it was like, okay, I'm letting this whole life that I've had for the last 20 years go. Well, then fast forward a few years, and now we're looking at coming back in reverse. And that was really hard because once I got back to the States, I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Like, do I just go back into the industry? Do I stay on this path of business ownership? And it was a hard decision. It was really difficult, where I had to sit there and I had to really dig deep and kind of figure out, what were my priorities? Does this align with my life, with the goals, with where our kids are at? And so there was a moment for me of alignment where it all sort of clicked. And it was like, if you go back to all the things that you once were, then that's exactly, like, that's what you're going to get out of life. But if you continue pushing through this fear and pushing through the unknown, like eventually you'll get to the other side. And so I sat there and I kind of went, okay, show me. I needed something tangible to know that I was making the right decision. Like, okay, I'm just going to keep following this path of the unknown. And literally within 48 hours, I got a call from somebody who wanted to write a book. They were a well-known NFL player. Um, and we wrote their memoir together and 3 children's books. And that was sort of that moment for me where, again, I said, I need to know. I needed that something tangible. And that was that something tangible.
Okay. So I'm going to just mention, we'll get to the spiritual landscape or self-help landscape for books and authors these days, how it's changed. But I want to get back to how you got influenced, because when you were a journalist, you probably weren't necessarily reading self-help books, paying attention to Don Miguel Ruiz. You were doing the journalism thing. And I used to be a public relations guy for like 18 years.
Mhm.
You're just too busy. And, the idea of self-help or woo, 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 and, good luck with that. You got a deadline. Okay. So who and how did you start to get influenced? And have you morphed over time? Like it used to be Don Miguel Ruiz, but now it's Rhonda Byrne or somebody else. How have you viewed the spiritual landscape, but personally interacted with it? Are there certain books you just always leave out or in sight in your office? How do you roll?
Yeah, there were 2 books for me. The first was The Tao of Pooh. Do you know the
Yeah,
book?
I would love that one. I used to buy
Love
that
that.
as a gift. That and Dan Millman's Peaceful Warrior, I went nuts on because it's safe and you can send that out. It's cute.
It's cute, and it's funny because my son, who's in 6th grade, he came home from school, this was a couple of months now, ago, and he said, "Oh, yeah, we're reading this book in class," and I thought, "No way," and I went and grabbed my tattered cover, I mean, it's well read, this book, and well loved, and I showed it to him, he's like, "Mom, that's the book we're reading." So it was this cute moment where we connected on that, but that, for me, the simplicity of that, and I still implement this into my life today, where it's less doing, more being.
It's
I
a
mean,
little
it's
red
that
book
simple.
for folks. You can still get it at any used bookstore. I'm sure it's available for sale new, but it's absolutely it's a little gem.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. The other one was, are you familiar with Alan Watts?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So The Wisdom of Insecurity. I think that is a fantastic book. And same thing, it's one of those things that it's timeless and you can always go back and you can always reference it and you can always find little hidden gems throughout that you can implement into your day.
Now, a million channels for the audience have hijacked Alan Watts in a good way for on YouTube. So you can get great music in the background, beautiful nature slides, and they'll do his speeches put
Yeah.
all over the place. So you can get a taste of Alan Watts before you run out and buy that book. I'm going to mention Winnie the Pooh quotes because we were there.
Why
Touched on the
not?
topic. Yeah, weeds are flowers too. I love that one. And then this is just straight Winnie the Pooh, not from Tao Pooh. And also, Piglet asks Winnie the Pooh, "How do you spell love?" And Winnie the Pooh says, "You don't spell it, you feel it." And I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So give us a mushy personal viewpoint that's sort of like those Winnie the Pooh quotes. What are some of those, kindness counts that goes a long way? Obviously, this is not corporate at all. In a way, the business that you're in technically is a little bit about the jugular. It's
Yeah.
still a bottom line sort of business. But you've mentioned you pay attention, you listen, you ask them what makes their heart sing. Give us some of the mushy things along the way too that have just kept you going. It's kept your humanity going in what has become a very tight business, very corporate, very removed these days. It ain't the 1950s anymore.
I think the biggest thing for me is just stories have the ability to impact lives.
Mm.
It's that simple. It's when you're doing it right and you're doing it for the right reasons at the end of the day, like that is what keeps me going. And I talk a lot about, even with my kids and with friends and family about when you're in this space, particularly for people that are either in really competitive business spaces or industries like the entertainment industry. Like the 3 things that I always pinpoint in my life is mindfulness. I think it's important to breathe. It's important to have those moments where you come back to center and you remember why you're doing what you're doing. It's very important to be intentional about every single day. Like, yes, you are going to have moments where you have to be on, where you have to be quick, you have to, make those quick judgments, but to do it with intention and to make sure the intention behind it is aligned with who you are and your core values, that's extremely important. And then the third for me is curating your life. Like your life is what you make it. And so I'm very careful about the way that we've curated our life. Who do we allow into those spaces and places with us? You know, when you're busy, you know, I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, I'm a wife, you only have so much time to give every single day. And so I'm really intentional about the people that we allow into those spaces to know that they also, things like alignment, that's important to them. Things like being mindful, being intentional. And I say that all the time. You have to curate your circle.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about the spirituality self-help landscape today as you've seen it evolve, because it has considerably in the last 20 years in a bunch of different ways. Give us your take on what's happening out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have people that are self-help gurus, and there's a huge speaker circuit out there, and then you have this new influencer culture, right? The digital space has blown up in the last 10 to 15 years. You know, I was in the book business 20 some years ago before any of that happened. And the way that you would find an author, the way that you would promote an author, it's completely different than it is today. And I think that that's been a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I think that with, you know, the positive side of what the digital landscape and social media has done is that it's allowed voices who maybe didn't have a platform prior to have those moments to be able to find their audience. And I think if they're doing so, again, from that place of authenticity, it's great. I love it. Here's the double-edged sword side of it, is that I think that it's very hard sometimes for people to cut through all of that noise and to find out who is the real deal. So I think that there are, and I hate to use imposter, because I think anybody who runs a business or who has done something in their life that they're scared of, they probably have a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I do think that particularly when you're talking about people who want to help other people in their life, you need to make sure that it isn't about their own ego and that it actually is about the help that they're doing for other people. And I think there's a really fine line when it comes to social media and the influencer culture.
Okay, so
and that may not be a popular opinion, but it's
that was a good answer. And on this show, we had 50 episodes taped in 2023. We've got, I think it's 118 episodes into April of 2025, but we may this summer in 2024 start running 2 a week for a 3-month trial period to see how that goes, to see if I break. And then if we can keep that going, we will. We've had on the show, though, Dr. Eben Alexander, Echo Bodine, Jennifer McLean, Kelly Noonan-Gores, the Heal film, but she's also got the book with Beyond Words and Simon and Schuster.
Yeah.
We've had some pretty top folks on the book side of things. Can you talk to us about specifically who are like 3 or 4 of still your favorite top authors out there? Like Don Miguel Ruiz keeps coming out with books. I think he's had a pretty good footprint. That's Amber Allen, I think, his publisher. Can you just share with us somebody out there who's doing it right or is holding their space, continuing their own model? Who do you admire, though, in the way that they're doing it or how they've expanded over time and grown it?
Ooh, that's a really great question. You know, and that type of question actually challenges me because I get so immersed in my own clients and in my own projects that that's where I tend to focus. And so I have to shut out a lot of that noise. I think somebody who's done it really, really well and continues to do it well, and I hate to go very, very commercial on this, but I think her book touched a lot of women's lives, and the way that it was promoted and just the way that it was done was tremendous. But Michelle Obama, a few years ago, you know, she had the first book hit and now the second book, and she was, you know, we know their publisher very, very well. She's selling out stadiums for people to come in and talk to them. And it was just, again, that level of authenticity and connection that I think people are looking for constantly, to be able to say, yeah, I really love this. This is what I want to sign on for. I'm trying to think others.
If it was self-help, spirituality, Eckhart Tolle, I mean, in a way, you could argue he hasn't had a ton of extra books come out, A New Earth, and then, you know, Power of Now. were kind of the pinnacle, and he still does tons of online work. It's shifted.
He does. Yeah, he
Donald
does.
Walsh has a new book coming out, I believe.
Mhm. Yep. Tony Robbins is another one who's on that space, and he's still out there on the speaker circuit and doing a ton of stuff. Richard Branson has become a little bit more visible in that space, which he's kind of gone from business ownership and taken those core fundamentals of that and brought it into that space a little bit. Which he's a phenomenal human being, and so I love to see that happen. And you see that there's a lot of crossover. I know Savannah Guthrie, she just came out with a book, and it's not necessarily self-help, but the way that the book was done, it's very much in that vein of inspiration. Like, how is it going? What's the reader experience? How is somebody going to experience this? And I think that's where the book business has changed ever so slightly, where you can still have a memoir or a narrative nonfiction now where its supplemental category is self-help. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
you're maybe not 100% in the self-help space, but there's a lot of books that could be adjacent to that world.
and I'll mention one other well-known author, Dr. Joe Dispenza, because on the retreat front, he's grabbing hotels for, I think it's 7 days, and it's up to like close to 2,000 people. And not to make it a business model thing, he's very authentic. He stays very science evidence-based, even though I'd argue behind the scenes, he's fully plugged into the cosmos and not quite putting all the cards down on the table. It's not that he hasn't mentioned it at least twice, but he wants to keep it real for the attendees. But we're talking a lot of dollars in the millions and a lot of intensive work. You get there, there's not a lot of downtime. There's a lot of support staff. You're doing a lot of mindfulness meditation to get you into the zone. So then the real collective healing or letting go work takes place. I had somebody who's been on the show twice last year do that week-long retreat, and it's just, that is almost the pinnacle on the getting away from the books for a second, of putting it into action as events go, where it's a week-long, really nice hotel. It blew me away to hear the details about that. Okay.
Yeah, there are actually people that do it in reverse too. I know there is, have you heard of On-Site?
No.
So On-Site is very, very similar, and because it's based just outside of Nashville, there are a lot of sort of your Nashville celebrities that will go, and it's a lot of money, but same sort of principles. And in, like I said, in reverse, you've got the owner of that who started doing all this work with clients and now is sort of navigating into the space of wanting to write a book. So it's interesting how sometimes people start with the book first and then build from there, and then other times they do the work of these of XYZ first and then the book comes later.
Okay, so tell us something about your personal journey and what you've had to let go of, what you've had to adopt, and then what have you been doing really well the whole time?
I think gratitude is what I've been doing really well the whole time. Just remembering to be grateful for the small things. Even just to be able to go outside on my deck and breathe in the air each day and to just go, okay, like, these are things to be grateful for. Because I think when you approach everything from that space, life tends to, you can handle all of the ebbs and flows a little bit better. Something in my personal life I'm really proud of. I think there's several things. I think number one, my children. I look at them every single day. We're raising them from a place of openness where, let's talk about these things. Even if they've had a bad day at school, the first thing we say to them, okay, let's take a couple minutes, let's breathe, let's, providing them practical tools to walk through a world that is laden with anxiety and depression and all of these things. So to be able to look at them, they're young, but to know we're instilling tools in them that will help them to navigate this world that we live in, if that makes sense. I think that's something we're really proud of. And then just the life that we've cultivated here. It's when we came back from Australia, we didn't know what life was going to look like. It was a challenging time. And there was, the health struggle was extremely real and it was scary. And there was a time in my life where I didn't know if my husband was going to make it until tomorrow. And so we had to really sort of get into that space of putting one foot in front of the other and just being okay with whatever happened. Like, all we had was that present moment. And so I think when you're able to, both from a personal perspective and then implement that into your business, where you can just be in that present moment, it changes everything. Because so many people are thinking they have to run for glory or run for the next best thing, or they're constantly chasing. And when you stop the chase and you're actually just in it, to me, that's where the magic happens.
Trust more, presence in the heart. Also, you're in North Carolina, for the audience, on the water, which is very important to have that fresh air, the ocean air, very therapeutic.
Absolutely. I remember there were so many, the water is my place. There were so many times when we were in Australia where I would sit there, and that is where I got clarity. It's where I got peace. It's where I had all of those moments. And now, being on this side of the world, and back at the water, it's almost like a full circle moment, where to be able to step out and smell the salt air like that every day, talk about gratitude, like thankful every single day.
Okay, now the name of the show is Angels, Positivity, and Love, and I couldn't fit the word compassion. It was just going to be too long. So we'll count that as a fourth unofficial thing. I haven't done this on the show out of 70 episodes taped. Not all of them have come out yet. But let's check the boxes on some stuff. Just first, do angels exist?
Of course.
Okay, just doing it. And then positivity, I'm going to kick out something. Positivity, abundance is positivity, or positivity is abundance. Sorry about that. If you do that, everything else flows. It doesn't have to be the dollars. Dollars are a consequence of you just being here,
Yeah.
and loving what you're doing, being passionate. What did we have left? Angels, positivity, and love. So between angels, positivity, love, and compassion, can you take us somewhere on one of those? Think of the Beatles, love, Ben Stiller, Heartbreak Kid. There's a million ways we could talk about love, or Winnie the Pooh. What can you tell us about, somehow, for the person out there, whether they're a 40-year healer watching this, they're
Yeah.
one of the people who's already been a guest, they just happen to peek in and watch the show, and they're catching you now, and they're thinking, I might want her as my next lit agent. I haven't been satisfied. What can you tell us about how this big thing works called life for all of us?
I think the biggest thing, and it's funny you say love, because out of those four things, right, I'm sitting there going, okay, I could speak on every single one. And as you said it, I looked down at my wrist, and there, and that is love. And it's
Can you
interesting because
describe the tattoo for us, please? Just, or hold it up even more. Oh, cool.
it is the symbol for love.
I love
And
it.
I got that. I was in New York at the time, and I was a young person in my early 30s, and just as you're growing, as you're learning, right? Like everything in life is a learning experience. And I had a lot of friends. I grew up in the Midwest, and so a lot of my friends, as soon as you would get done with college, everybody was getting married and having kids, and I was just not on the same path as them. And I remember one of my friends saying, "Well, Jen, when are you going to grow up?" I was home for the summer. I came home, as I always did, and was by the lake. And I thought, wait a minute, what about my life is not grown up? Like, I have this beautiful career. I've got an apartment on the Upper West Side. Like, just because I don't have the things that that person has doesn't mean that my life holds any less value. And so it was a moment for me where I kind of went, okay, what is that special sauce? What is that thing? And for me, I decided to get this tattoo because it wasn't just about loving the life that you were creating and loving exactly where you were at. It was knowing that until you had that deep, profound love for yourself, that none of it was going to be possible. And so it always starts, for me, it's working life from the inside out. If you have, whether it's love, whether it's positivity, whether it's compassion, if you have those things to put out into the world, you'll get them back.
And we're not talking like any possible book out of you that's a short 40-pager, self-help, spiritual at some point. Have you mulled that over a few times?
It's funny you should mention that. I have been asked for several years, Jen, when are you going to write your book? When are you going to write your book? And again, everything for me goes back to alignment. And it was placed on my heart about a year and a half ago. We are 55,000 words in right now, and I'm hoping to have it done by May.
I love it. Maybe having you back on the show in 2025, although we'll tape this year whenever we're allowed to, if you'll come back on. I'm going to light some sage because we do that on every show. I'm going to blow it to North Carolina from Texas. Folks at home should have already done this. You should have already watched the show. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment, please. What part of this has resonated that Jennifer Smith in North Carolina has already talked about? the founder of Spin Literary. This is just regular sage you can get at the Whole Foods from Juniper Ridge in California. I'm also holding a red-tailed hawk feather. I'm going to blow it from Texas through 2 screens. I've done this as a guest on 40-something shows, but all my guests have gotten this done. Don't just smell sage. Ask for flowers if you want, a beach smell, some beach you haven't been to, Bethany Beach in Delaware. What are you getting, Jennifer Smith, in North Carolina right now?
I am getting those sandy beaches in Fisherman's Bay, Australia.
Are you really? Okay, and we had done
Yeah.
this before the show, so we knew it would work. It's always good to like not get
Yeah.
busted on air. I did this for Rhonda Byrne, the Irish angel mystic in Ireland, and she's like, "Oh, I don't smell the sage," and I'm like, "Oh, heart attack! First time anybody's not done it." She says, "No, I'm smelling daisies and roses," and I was like, "Oh, good."
Well, there you go.
Exactly. Okay, if you would, close your eyes and catch a little extra, either wave action, flowers, or the sage itself. Let angels, your relatives, Mary, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, whoever, bring it to you. And if you could just say, got it, you don't have to share what it is. You can share what it is, and I'll snub this out. You get a little extra?
Yep.
Take it. I'll put up a couple angel photos in a second, so we check that box as well. But I want to read a couple quotes to you. I don't know exactly what the quotes are going to be yet, but I'm going to find something that's inspirational for all of us. How about this? An angel named Dale, who coached an Olympic athlete, just take my word for it. And let me keep snubbing this out, or I'm going to have smoke blowing around. He said, this whole path that we're on in life for humans, it's not about knowing, it's about continued learning. Few humans fully comprehend the difference here. So it's about being here and continued growth and expansion versus just sticking with concrete knowing that, only lasts a week, a month, a decade or two, or this lifetime. Can you talk to us about the difference between being up here and awareness? Like, grow your awareness here, not your thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you get inside your head and you're even just doing life, whether it be business or personal life from a place of head, there you limit yourself in the amount of growth you can have because your head is going to tell you to do one thing. Where if you take it a little bit deeper and you go with your heart, like to me, that is where passion lives. It's where inspiration lives. It's where our purpose lives. Like your head is going to tell you every day of the week, like do X because you're going to get Y, right? There's always sort of that, it's very transactional in your head, where in your heart, it's a little bit more of a belief system and a trust system.
Oh, I love it. Okay, another angel named Mac, don't call her Mackenzie. I might have to pull her up later. She said there's a million definitions of compassion because there's a trillion layers of it. Plus, everybody needs to hear it in every different language. Plus, your value system you have to have, and plus, we all have a different version of it. She said that compassion is treating every moment with the awareness of a newborn baby. Can you talk to us about that awareness when it's razor sharp, razor fun? Let's do better words. Yeah, when it's razor fun, not New York corporate or the rest, but when you're just so like, whoa, I'm hearing the grass grow. When are your peaks generally? Is it after exercise? Is it after the kids, before the kids? Can you share how your inner clock ticks?
Two things. Number one, in the early mornings of the day. And that started for me way back in my New York days. At the time, I was a runner. This is, many, many years and 2 kids later, I don't run anymore because knees and all the things. But back then, when I was younger, to be able to experience New York City when it's quiet, there was something so beautiful about those moments where all there was, it was the streets were lit by the street lights. There was nobody on them. It was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and to just run and hit the pavement, that I absolutely loved. And so I've implemented that into my life now, where in those early morning hours when nobody needs me, when everybody else is still asleep, like those are the moments for me. So that's one. The other one is walking down a sandy beach. Like, I don't know what it is about the sand in my toes and just hearing the waves crashing in, but those are the 2 moments for me where even if I'm having a really bad day, I can go dip my toes in the ocean and then it puts everything back into perspective.
I love it. And you stirred a memory inside me. I mean, here we are in San Antonio. And spring can start as early as like late January, mid-February. I mean, I'll have sunflower seeds already this tall, and by April, 5 feet tall. But I can remember in New York, spring being as quick as like 2 days sometimes in Central Park. The cherry blossoms.
Yeah.
I ran for the Central Park Track Club, but originally the New York Harriers competitively. But you'd be running by and you couldn't help but notice the petals, the flowers, and the trees. But again, 2 days later, it would be gone. It was like
Yeah.
this, not like Australia or North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah, we are full of pollen right now.
And the trees are just doing that. They're building the leaves, but it's about to be crazy pollen here.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one more quote. Sometimes the person next to you or a stranger just needs validation via love and compassion. A smile changes any moment. So too does laughter or a few kind words. Be compassion to all, do it. And I might add, laughter is healing and hope to others. Like, do laughter. Now, that last quote, healing and hope to others, was Joy and Angel. We'll put her up in a second. And that first one was Dale. Again, I don't know. He's getting some on-air time here. What's your reaction to that? What do you love about that? What resonates?
I love, it's funny. There's two things that come to mind on that as well. I even from the time I was young, and I say this to my daughter now, like being able to, particularly for women, to look at another woman to be able to compliment her. Oh, I love your shirt that you're wearing, or those earrings are beautiful, or you look so wonderful. Did you cut your hair? Did you do something different? Like even in those small moments, you never know what great impact they might have. And again, particularly for women. So when I was younger, back in college, I remember I would go out with my group of girlfriends, and that was always, we would set the intention before going out. Okay, let's try and find one other woman that we can say, hey, I really like your outfit, or I really like your purse, whatever it might be. To watch people's faces change and to watch just a light come over them and sort of wash over them, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And I still do it today. And I remember when I really implemented it, back to my New York days, I was sitting on the train. And I remember for 1 month of time, I made a promise to myself that every single day I was going to make eye contact with somebody and offer them a smile. And just to watch people's reactions. Now, granted, there were a few times I got a few strange looks, right? It's New York subway, and people are like, what are you doing looking at me? But there were a few times where you could really feel that change just in another person's demeanor, their disposition. And I think I love both of those things. Like I love it because it's true. Like laughter is life's greatest medicine, but it is when you're kind to other people, it all goes back to getting back what you put out there. So if you're putting out kindness, if you're putting out joy, you're putting out a smile, those things are going to come back tenfold.
Okay, kindness counts and goes a long way. I agree. You might not be able to do that today on the New York City subway. The way I remember it, you could get away with it. I love saying hi to people. I talked to everybody back when I was there. Cab drivers were convinced I must be from California. There's no way I was a New Yorker in any way, because I literally would say hi to doormen, security people, cab drivers. Yeah. Here's Joy, speaking of which, the very first angel people meet. If people at home want to put their hand out like she's a fireplace, feel a little bit of warmth, kindness, sparkle, you can get it down your back. But you can also catch a flower smell or that sage. I'm not lighting anything. Let her bring you something. If you don't mind, do you mind asking just, hey, what do you have for us? Or just get a compliment privately, but you'll hear her voice. And whatever you want to relay, you can just say, I got it, and we'll move on. You can get a hug, or you can share what she's reminding you about on some topic where you're like, oh, no, I want to talk about that.
Mhm.
And no try Yoda at home. Always try Archangel Gabriel. It's not about either. It's just about dropping out of your head into your heart to be in that stillness, so you can actually hear a high peppy voice who's like, hey. And what have you got for us, Jennifer Smith in North Carolina?
Joy's given me connection.
Interconnectedness of all, or just right now, you and her?
Connection, all. The interconnectedness of just all of us.
I love it. And that is the name of the game, is to realize, the more you realize it, everything is interconnected, the more you're able to kind of relax on the details. Okay, Charlotte, everybody's favorite teacher from third form if you're in Australia right now, New Zealand, Canada, or third grade, but not Mrs. Wilson, the one who always put you in detention, the nice one, Mrs. Brown. So think of her as her. What does she have as a reminder for us all, or something you can talk about from one of your life stages?
I think the thing that I'm getting from Charlotte is to embrace your no. Like, I think that's the other thing is, when you're living from a place of alignment, we get into this sort of pattern where we think we have to say yes to everything, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a mom or a spouse or partner of someone. And it's remembering that there's a lot of power in no and that it's a complete sentence. You know, sometimes no doesn't need to be followed up with anything else. But I think when we embrace that no, it allows us to align with the things that are meant for us. It allows us to sort of step into our own strength where you no longer have to be doing so much or chasing. And we've talked about this several times already, but I think there's a lot of power in embracing no.
Okay, before we go to the next angel, can you define the part of your brand with Spin Literary that is the most exciting, where if you had 10 more authors today suddenly ring you up this afternoon, it could be the Shack, sorry, I'm totally blanking on his name, Paul Young. It could be the Shack just saying, hey, I watched this show and I want to do a special book that I had only thought of yesterday. That'd be kind of cool if you liked him and he liked you.
Yeah.
What is the absolutely, your pulse starts going fast. It's like that. Remember the furniture show, the series A&E, Love Something. He would look at antiques and his pulse would start racing because he got so excited about antiques. Now, not everybody's into antiques, but what are your couple of areas that are just, you're absolutely, you do headstands over, cartwheels?
Yeah. For me, it's the ghostwriting. We touch every single facet of the publishing industry, and we've built imprints for people. We've agented for people. We consult with all the big five, like you name it, we've done it. But for me, where I get really excited is when I get to come alongside somebody and actually dig in and go those layers deeper to figure out this is the way we need to tell the story. And I sometimes joke because when I'm in those moments and we're doing those sessions, really trying to pull out the greatest parts of somebody's story, I don't think I've ever had anybody that I've worked with not cry. So I joke that I'm sort of like a glorified therapist in that regard. But for me, that is the thing that excites me the most because it's somebody having an idea and knowing deep within their core that this idea or this thing that they have, oh, as I just lost my glasses, it has the capacity to change somebody else's life. And then to be able to be the one to put words to that, to see those words come to life on paper, like that is for me, that's it.
Nice. And so you crack people open like a walnut, but for the betterment of everyone. Okay.
Yes.
Exactly. Here's my guardian angel, just Min for the short version of the name. Pacific Princess, light waves of energy and water. Anybody who wants to catch the ocean smell, Noosa for you, unless there's even a more favorite beach in Australia. Catch what you can catch, but also get some inspiration on the next topic or chapter you can just take us through. And I forgot to say, my only rule in 12 years of doing this for a few thousand folks is just give yourself permission to let go. Ask angels, which are in and around you all the time, always ready to help. Set your intent. Be like, hey, angels, get me out of my head, into my heart. Help me either hear, smell that sage, catch the sound of some beach waves. Close your eyes for that. Whatever you'll allow for is the only thing that's important. You have to live your life.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you getting?
I'm getting just let go. And I think the context of let go is so many people, and I've even done this myself, where you get stuck in the details. And so sometimes you just have to let it flow instead of trying to be so calculated in the way that you're putting something together. And I am reminded of that a lot as I'm in the writing process of my own story. I can write everybody else's story with my eyes closed, and it's, those are the easy things. But when you then have to switch and put yourself in that place that you've guided all of these other people through, there's a different level and a different challenge that comes with that. So what I'm getting is let go. And I think that's important for all of us, because as human beings, we're all holding on to something. And there's always those places where we have to go, okay, that's that place where I need to just sort of be free.
I love it. And I'm going to do a random quote from Archangel Raphael. Compassion is releasing fears and judgments, and that could be compassion to yourself and others. So yes,
Yeah.
letting go is letting go. Keep letting go before your ego and thinking. And it's a brick manufacturing system, brick factory, and it wants to build walls. And the more you can let go, the more you get to breathe freely and have even more creativity and love and interconnectedness.
Yeah.
We're doing Geronimo, last but not least, Native American Chief, Unconditional Love, older version here. Yeah, he's a tiger because he's action, but he's really a big kitty. He's like a great grandfather on everyone's team. All about, though, action, dry wit, humor. Can you get one more reminder for us all? I mean, he loves that Nike bumper sticker saying, just do it. That's his thing. But what are you hearing from Geronimo?
I'm getting peace. And that if it steals your peace, it's never worth it.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, one more area to talk about here. What do you see as the future landscape of the book publishing business in general? Because has it not been tightening up? Has it not felt like musical chairs with the acquisitions, the shrinkage going on at the top level, but also the way authors are being engaged or not engaged anymore? I mean, plus the bookstores have been disappearing. Do you mind
Yeah.
going on a tangent before you answer it? Who are your two favorite bookstores? New York, LA, down in Sydney, Melbourne? Can you share two favorite spots that people should always make sure they visit?
Oh, Tattered Cover in Denver, Colorado. I think that's one of those sort of staples. And there is one, it is in Fairhope, Alabama. And I tell you what, I cannot remember the name of it right now, but the experience of walking in there, it's just, and I could probably list off 20 others where it's an old bookstore that you can walk into and you just feel, it reminds me of, what is that movie with Meg Ryan, where the big bad fox books
Oh,
went next.
yeah. It wasn't Sleepless in Seattle, though. It was
No, which one was it?
the guy doesn't mention that he's buying her out,
Yes.
the bookstore. I remember that
I
one.
can't remember the name of that movie to save my life, but I feel like those types of stores, right, where you walk in and there's just something magical about it. I will be old school till the day I die, where being able to go and like feel a book and smell a book, like, to me, that's a really real experience.
You've
Um,
got mail.
yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Oh,
So
and that was a really good one too, because I mean, they were in a financial pinch. You could feel the pressure that they're under. And that's been going on now for decades. So
yeah, for sure. Rainy Day Books in Kansas City is also a great one. And Vivian, their owner, is a staple in the industry. And I've worked with her son, Jeffrey, on several events through the years. But that's another great, great store. The industry. Yeah, the industry is interesting. I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of shifts, which the book industry, like anything in entertainment, sort of has those ebb and flow moments where, it can get a little rocky and scary. I think where things have changed is that writers and authors are finding a lot of different paths to publishing, where 10, 15 years ago, if you did not get a book deal with either one of your big five or one of your strong indie publishers, you sort of were cut off in terms of what your options might be. There wasn't this self-publishing landscape. There wasn't the hybrid model that exists today. There's a lot of vanity presses now that exist, particularly for people on the speakers market. There's a lot of different avenues now. And so even when we have clients come to us and say, hey, here's what I want to do, where should I be? It's no longer sort of this one track. There's 4 or 5 different options that you have to figure out which one is the best suited for them. And so I think there's a lot more options. What that means for publishers on a whole is still to be determined. But I think you're going to see publishers having to get really creative about the ways that they're acquiring, about maybe the things that they're offering. You know, a lot of your hybrid publishers now are offering more like a split. It's almost like a co-adventure as opposed to just a royalty split and an advance once you earn out. And so there's a lot more financial benefit for authors in certain models. And if publishers want to still stay viable and sort of have the bottom line that they've had for the last 20 years, they're going to have to start playing with some different models in publishing.
Okay, now we're doing more like Wall Street talk here, or Wall Street Journal. And I'm gonna take it one more level. If Amazon bought BookBaby, for example, and there are plenty of other industries that suddenly have way bigger like pockets, including countries and regions that are looking to just spend their cash. Do you see some of the publishing houses maybe succumbing to being bought out from a completely novel direction? Do you want to just take a stab at what we could be looking at, like just 3 houses left that are independent or classic the way we know them now in 10 years? Do you want to make a prediction of some sort?
I don't know that we would ever. I mean, I think the big 5 are going to exist. We saw that happen last year, you know, with the acquisition of Simon and Schuster. They were up on the sales market. Random House put in an offer and the DOJ shut it down.
Yep.
And there was talk that HarperCollins was going to try and make an offer this year. And I remember for those of us in the industry, we thought, why are you going to waste the time, money, and your resources? They already said no to Penguin, Random House. They're not going to say yes to another one of the big 5 trying to come in. And it was interesting because I do some consulting work for investors. And I think we have worked across 14 different countries now. And most of them are investors who are wanting to get into the publishing space in some sort of capacity. And so it was interesting as Simon and Schuster was on the not chopping block, so to say, but on the market for sale, how many people from those countries were wanting to talk about what ownership of a publishing house might look like. So I think where you're going to see the industry shift, again, I don't think you'll ever see the big 5 go away, because not only in the States, but globally, they have such a foothold. But I think what you might see is that instead of media companies or publishers being owned independently, you may see more tech giants getting into the space. You may see more investors becoming involved in the space. And it may be, you know, from that business perspective, the ownership is going to change that way.
Look, I think that was super helpful. I know that's not part of the usual bailiwick here of Angels, Positivity, and Love. What's a final reminder for folks they're not alone, to buck up, that they came in for a unique life path, not to get bogged down in the details, or this happened to me, this drama, or this situation, that they're more free than they realize? Can you give us that last inspirational pep talk without totally tapping into what you're writing currently in your book, or give us a hint about your book and tap into it?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that each of us have a story. Like when you're navigating through difficult times, it may feel heavy. You may feel like you're never going to be on the other side of it. But through that process of putting one foot in front of the other, eventually you do get on the other side of it. But part of the reason we go through those things is because of the connection that happens within our stories. And it's when we're able to take those things that we've learned and share them with other people, that then we have now left that positive impact on not only the world around us, but directly on other people's lives. And so I think it's constantly remembering that you have a story, your story is meant to be shared, and through that storytelling creates connection.
Beautiful. Okay, and if there was a mantra you had to print on t-shirts, you have to sell these t-shirts, it's going to have a Spin Literary logo or your future book logo. What's the mantra going to be? 5 words or less. It could be 7, and it could be the tattoo, but it can't be a foreign symbol. It's got to be in English so the audience can relate. What's your final mantra or 2 for all of us to keep it simple, keep it real simple?
Freedom over fear.
You were ready for that one, and you didn't know my questions ahead of time. Freedom over fear. I like that. And so that's here over here, is how I'll put it. Thank you so much, Jennifer Smith, for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. You're a treat to have on.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
And great seeing you again. It has been a long 8, 9 years. So what a treat. Thank you again.